Helena Kennedy, a Labour Party member of the House of Lords, has taken a swipe at the British people by claiming those who voted for Brexit did not fully understand what they might lose. Ms. Kennedy also claimed a second referendum proposal should be left on the table, if the government does not deliver what was promised to Britons before the EU referendum in 2016. She said, "I am someone who is saying that you cannot keep saying that there is going to be a second referendum just to get the result that you want if you are a Remainer, like I am. I do think if a deal comes through and it really is very different from what we think people had in mind when they voted to leave Europe, then there should be a new referendum to say what you do think of this deal. And it should go to the people." Getty Bloomberg Brexit News. Helena Kennedy claimed Brexiteers did not know the risks of leaving the EU. "I certainly think there is an argument for that, and I think it is one of the options that Parliament will have to look at when the deal comes in front of Parliament at the end of this year. Is this deal really going to benefit Britain? And did people think this is what they were voting for? It may be at that stage that people take a different view, but you can't be cavalier with the fact that we did have this vote, and even although it was not by vast majority, it was won by those who wanted to leave." The Labour Lord then outlined areas in which she believes the British people were not aware they were risking when they voted to cut ties with the Brussels Club. "I happen to believe that many people had no idea of how complex this was and what they stood to lose." Helena Kennedy she told Bloomberg, "I happen to believe that many people had no idea of how complex this was and what they stood to lose. The rights of workers, the ways in which we have protection of consumer goods and the consumer rights that are protected, the way that we have high standards about, for example, lead in paint, contaminants in goods that we buy. Those standards have been built up over years, and I don't think people had any idea of that, and I certainly think they did not know it was a risk they could put the whole Irish settlement under threat. I think there are lots of problems here that people didn't conceive of when they voted. The British government has outlined standards will not fall in the UK once Britain leaves the European Union." David Davis set out, in one of the government's landmark Brexit speeches, that the UK is committed to the highest regulators' standards after Brexit. The government has suggested the UK would stay aligned to the European Union's regulation in some sectors post-Brexit and use an independent arbitration mechanism to handle disputes. During his Vienna speech, the Brexit secretary called for mutual recognition between two regulatory regimes which would avoid trade barriers. He said, "We start from a position of total alignment, with unprecedented experience in working with one another's regulators and institutions. The agreement we strike will not be about convergence, but what we do when one of us shows is to make changes to our rules." The government agreed a transitional phase with the European Union last month and are now preparing for trade negotiations with Brussels to decide on Britain's future relationship with the bloc.